Good afternoon. I would like to open our special meeting on our budget presentations. Today we will receive information, and over the next several weeks we will have a public hearing and the opportunity to have meetings with staff to fully vet any questions we may have. Then on June 21st, we'll have an opportunity for open discussion and a vote on the budget. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our county manager, Mark Watson. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of County Commissioners, and Madam Clerk. I'm pleased to formally present to you my recommended budget for fiscal year 2022. Last year's budget message had a theme of moving forward, and I'm happy to report that we've done just that. This organization has been resilient in a time when many have languished. We have operated in a way that has allowed our residents to receive services and employees to continue working, and I'm proud of our team and extremely proud of the support that the Board of County Commissioners has shown over the past year. Many new additional services have been provided by necessity over the past 12 months. However, we also supported and delivered all the normal functions and public services that our residents have come to expect and rely upon. One of the most important normal functions staff accomplished in this past year was the 2021 Property Revaluation. Revaluation is a task that is difficult under most normal circumstances, and completing it during a pandemic was nothing short of remarkable. The tax administrator, Mr. Van Harrell, and his team completed over 33 community engagement meetings and events, working to inform and educate the public. The work paid off, and I'm pleased with their effort and the integrity of the revaluation process. The budget for fiscal year 2022 reflects the impact of the 2021 property revaluation. In total, real property values increased 30.6%. For fiscal year 2022, the revenue neutral property tax rate is 57.8 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. The proposed property tax rate for the recommended budget is 58.8 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, reflecting a proposed property tax rate of 1 cent above revenue neutral. I'm aware that some of you were prepared for a revenue neutral rate recommendation. However, after looking at all components of our revenue, I am unable to recommend a budget that provides for the needs of our county at that rate. Mr. Blake Hart will provide additional details during his portion of this presentation. However, I want to provide information that I borrowed from a Forsyth County presentation, and I quote, "A personal property is valued at market rate each year, while real estate is valued at market value every 4 years. A lower property tax rate will result in less tax revenue generated by personal property. The net effect is that the overall tax base is re-equalized, with more of the overall tax burden shifting back from personal property to real property," end quote. While some property owners may see an additional required tax payment for real property, they most likely will see a reduction in their motor vehicle and personal property tax bill. We are anticipating a redistribution of sales tax revenue to occur, resulting in a reduction in the revenue available to fund county public services, public education, and volunteer fire districts. The county's largest source of operating revenue is the ad valorem property tax. Real property, automobiles, boats, trailers, income-producing personal property are subject to property tax unless otherwise specified and exempted by the North Carolina general statutes. The assessed value of property is subject to the property tax rate levied by the Board of County Commissioners per $100 in value. The estimated assessed valuation for fiscal year 2022 is $36.19 billion. That is an $8.47 billion or 36.6% increase over fiscal year 2021. The fiscal year 2022 budget is balanced with an increased use of available or unassigned fund balance to meet the organizational needs. We listened to the Board of County Commissioners and have heard loud and clear that you do not wish to carry unassigned fund balance above your specified limit. Therefore, this budget recommendation is balanced with appropriations from unassigned fund balance for use in funding one-time expenditures. We will continue to maintain the 20% fund balance as outlined by policy. The amount of fund balance appropriated will increase from $11.65 million in fiscal year 2021 to $20.77 million in fiscal year 2022. This includes unassigned fund balance appropriations from the county's general fund, debt service fund, economic development fund, EMS fund, and school radio fund. The areas of focus for me in building this recommended budget are 5. First, public health and safety. Second, education partners. Third, strengthening this organization. Fourth, facility operations and capital investments. And fifth, community partners. With regard to public health and safety, public health and safety continues to be a significant part of the recommended budget. To recall, last year the Sheriff's Office did not receive an increase in the FY2021 budget outside of the expected pay-for-performance increases. I appreciate Sheriff Cathy and his staff working with us to continue to provide their excellent level of service to the residents of Union County this past year. There were unmet needs that I have included in the recommended budget. Additionally, there are items included for volunteer fire, emergency management, and public health. With regard to our education partners, Union County is fortunate to have 2 education partners in Union County Public Schools and South Piedmont Community College. Over the past year, we have worked closely with these organizations to ensure information sharing and understanding of the fiscal needs. Both UCPS and Spcc have organizational needs that are significant, and I wish that I was in a position to recommend funding the total request each organization made. However, in working to maintain fiscal discipline and balance the overall needs of our organization and our partner agencies, I'm not able to do that. I have provided recommendations for funding that I believe are appropriate and in line with community expectations. South Piedmont Community College requested $412,000 to match state salary increases, rent, utilities, maintenance, information technology enhancements, landscaping, surveying, and master planning. I am recommending $350,000 in additional funding. Additionally, it should be noted that debt service for South Piedmont Community College has increased to the level of $2 million, has increased to $2 million since FY 2020. When you combine the debt and operational expenses for South Piedmont Community College, the total is $6,373,694. Union County Public Schools had a total request of $8,088,671 to provide for operational needs. The majority of the request is tied to investment in UCPS employees and anticipated increases in salaries, benefit increases from the state. I am recommending $5,500,000 in additional funding for Union County Public Schools, or 68% of their requested funding. This recommendation allows for strategically funding needs such as facilities maintenance, completion of state mandatory salary increases for certified and non-certified staff, an increase to supplement increases for classroom teachers, school nurses, psychologists, and social workers. Additionally, this funding would allow for an increase in the hourly rate for bus drivers, compensation market adjustments for transportation and support staff. As this recommendation is not the full amount of the UCPS request, it is anticipated that the supplement increases would be implemented in January of 2022. The operational capital budget for UCPS is recommended at the fiscal year 2021 level of $18,475,663. This does not provide funding for all of their operational capital requests. I am recommending that UCPS use prior year CIPS project savings in the amount of $600,000 for requests that are not covered in the recommended budget. Our employees are our most invaluable resource. As I said in my opening comments, our staff has been resilient. This has been something we should all be proud of. This past year was unprecedented, as we heard repeatedly, but I believe that I have seen from staff what I always see, and that is that they are professionals who show up every day prepared, willing and able to do their job in a way that's anticipated by the public we serve. My recommendation continues the funding of pay for performance and allows for the expected market-based pay band adjustments to occur. While not part of the proposed budget, I do want to share with you 3 other items that I will be recommending for approval at the June 21st board meeting. As part of our ongoing employee engagement, we conduct employee climate surveys. As part of the most recent survey conducted in late 2019, we received feedback from our employees, and the following proposals are in line with what our employees have expressed. One is an enhancement to maternity-paternity leave. We've heard a lot about that over the last 24 months, especially with the actions taken by former President Trump related to federal workers. An enhancement to volunteer time off, that would be volunteering for community functions, but being paid for that time off to assist in our community. And the third is a floating holiday. Paid parental leave in line with federal and state government as well as other local governments. I will be recommending a policy change that allows for 8 weeks of paid maternity-paternity leave. Paid parental leave offers employees an opportunity to bond with their new child, adjust to their new situation, and balance both personal and professional obligations while receiving base salary compensation. Volunteer time off. Union County is committed to promoting and sustaining the quality of life of its residents, and to that end encourages county employees to volunteer their time to serve and support our community. This policy recommendation would allow for up to 16 hours of paid leave provided annually for eligible employees who wish to volunteer for approved community service agencies or organizations. The floating holiday, this recommendation would make an make an addition to our paid time off policy. The floating holiday would provide eligible employees with the ability to celebrate and observe a holiday or an event not officially observed by the county. Again, these three items are not directly included in the budget proposal, but will be presented as policy changes for approval at the June 21st board meeting. Moving along to the next priority with facilities, operations, and capital investment. Part of my commitment to the board and our organization is improved business processes. One of the areas that I am very proud of is our facilities department and the work they have done to be proactive and thoughtful in the management of our fiscal assets. My recommendation includes funding for additional staff and facilities that would allow for better staff utilization in servicing our facilities. This funding includes $1.2 million in additional costs to open and operate new facilities that will be coming online or have come online. This is a cost that must be covered within the existing budget and reduces the county's ability to fund additional service growth. Additionally, the capital funding recommendation allows us to continue to move forward in a responsible way, both physically and organizationally aligned, and in an organizationally aligned manner to ensure that our facilities are well maintained and cared for. And lastly, our community partners. For the second year, the budget department facilitated an open application process for community partners. Staff reviewed the applications and provided recommendations on agency funding. My recommendation maintains funding for our current community partners and provides for 2 new agencies, Ground 40 and Bridge to Recovery. Both are recommended to receive $25,000 each. I want to thank the board for your support over the past year. We've been able to accomplish a great deal, and this would not have been possible without your support. I want to thank the management team, the department directors, and specifically our budget and finance teams for working over the past few months to develop this recommendation. Now, I would like to recognize Mr. Blake Hart and Mrs. Beverly Lyles to complete the recommended budget presentation. Blake?
Thank you, Mark. Okay. All right. Chairman Helms, members of the Board of County Commissioners, and Manager Mark Watson, it's my privilege to stand before you today and share with you some of the details of the FY22 manager's recommended budget. We know that one of the biggest things that we've been through as a county over the past year is the revaluation of our property tax base. One of the things that we're required to do statutorily is to go through the calculation of what is a revenue neutral tax base as a result of that new property valuation. I'm sharing with you the details of that. The state statute lays out clearly what to do. I like to say that in doing this, we use materials provided for in a template by the LGC, and I also shared my work with Dr. Chris McLaughlin from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Government, and he verified that the practice that we had in place was in line with the statute. So I feel confident with the numbers I'm sharing with you up here. The first line, you'll see that the tax rate of FY21 of 73.09 cents. The revenue that was projected to be generated on that tax rate was $204.8 million. The FY22 assessed property value is $36.18 or $19 million. The tax rate that would produce revenue equal to the FY 2021 amount, or the $204.8 million, would be 55.98. Once you calculate that revenue neutral base number, then the statute allows you to go back to prior years, to your most recent previous revaluation, and get the average growth rate over that time period. And then you're allowed to apply that growth rate to the new year to get some growth on top of that. And that's where we get the 3.24% right there. And that takes us from 55.98 to 57.8, which is the revenue neutral tax rate, based on the revaluation work done by our tax office. As County Manager Watson mentioned, the revenue neutral rate is 57.8, and the proposed rate is 58.8, so that's 1 penny above the revenue neutral rate. This chart shows you, starting at the far right, is the FY22 amount. It walks you through this calculation over the past 3 years. In total, the real property values have increased 30.6% over FY21. The FY22 value of a penny is $3.6 million. And again, the proposed rate for FY22 is 58.8 cents above a revenue neutral, or 1 penny above. So the next question we have to answer is, how does that impact the tax bill to a resident? I'm a county resident. I'm very proud to be a Union County resident. I own a home here, and so this is important to me as well as how this will impact me. If you look at each of these infographics represents a potential case for a family or a homeowner in Union County at different ranges of homes that exist in the county. On the far left, you have a home that's valued at about $150,000, moving up to the higher end of $750,000. And the one that represents the median homeowner, or the median home value in the county, is the second from the left, or $293,000. $337.77. That's the median home value in Union County currently. The blue box there shows you what the tax bill would be based on the revenue neutral tax rate. So if we're looking at the example of the median home value of $293,000, that the revenue neutral bill, the revenue neutral tax rate applied to that home value would create a bill of $1,696. The bill created by a tax rate of 1 penny above revenue neutral would be $1,725. So that would be an increase of $29 based on the proposal from the county manager for this tax rate. That's for a home value. Now, as part of the manager's comments, he talked about the impact of motor vehicles as well. We know that the motor vehicle tax bill is created by the value of your motor vehicle, which goes down annually as your vehicle is worth less, which is an inverse relationship with property, because property usually goes up each year. But the property tax bill for a vehicle is calculated by the value of the vehicle times the tax rate. And so we know when we calculate a revenue neutral tax rate, that tax rate oftentimes, most time, goes down. The last experience here was a little different than that. But as we look at the tax rate change from a 73.09 to 58.8, then there will be a savings to county residents' vehicle tax bills. And again, this is following the similar pattern that we had on the slide before, giving a range of vehicle values and showing what the tax bill would be generated at the revenue neutral tax rate, and then what it would be at 1 penny above revenue neutral. Residents will pay less in vehicle tax in 2022 due to the decreased tax rate and the decreasing vehicle value. And the average vehicle value in Union County is right at $13,000 and that average savings on the average vehicle value is about $19. And in this example, the closest would be $15,000 vehicle, and that savings would be about $23. So there'll be a bit of an offsetting with a possible increase to a home value with a decrease to the amount that you would pay on your tax bill for your vehicle based on the proposal. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about the median home value and tax bill over time. Go back over the last decade from FY12 through FY22. and look at the value, the change in the median home value, which is the blue bars in the chart there, and the orange line represents the median tax bill. So what I wanted to illustrate here was, if you go back to FY12, you can see the median home value at that time was $161,130. The average, the median tax bill at that time was $1,072. And you'll see that red line move, which represents the amount paid by a county resident or taxpayer, moves pretty flat through FY15, and then it jumps up, and that's reflective of the increase in tax rate based on the litigation with the school system at that time. You'll see that jumps up as a result of that. It goes over until FY19, and if you remember in FY19, the tax rate was decreased by 5 pennies at that point to provide some savings and some tax relief to county residents. So you'll see the average tax bill drop down a little bit, and then you'll see in FY19, 20, 21, and now 22, the median home value has increased quite a bit, and in correlation, the median tax bill has increased as well. I wanted to show you this because I wanted to illustrate the fact that the median tax bill changes in Union County are driven by home values, by rising home values, not by significant tax rate fluctuations. As an example also, the median home value has increased, so the value of property, value of homes, has increased in that 10-year time span 82.1% since FY12, but the median tax bill has only increased 58%. So again, as a county resident and a homeowner, I like to see that, because that means that the county commission has kept the tax obligation or tax bill for county residents growing at a slower rate than the average valuation. So I'd like to commend you on that. Also, in FY12, for reference, the tax rate was 66.5 pennies, and as compared to the proposed rate in FY22 of 58.8 pennies. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the tax rates. We know that over the past several years, we've operated with a bifurcated tax rate or a segmented tax rate. We know we always roll back up to what has been a rate of 73.09, but we've isolated that or broken that down into different categories. Going forward, that won't be the case. Going forward, we're going to operate with a singular tax rate, which, as proposed, is 58.8. Wherever it lands, that's how we're going to be operating. I've shown you as an illustration how that breaks out based on this proposal, with the general county fund at 48.56 pennies, the debt fund at 9.8 pennies, and the economic development fund, which is representative of our obligations for the industrial business park, at 0.45 pennies, accumulating in a tax rate of 58.8 in this proposal. And you'll see that in previous iterations of the budget we broke the tax rate out for schools, for education, for EMS, and countywide fire. And as we move towards consolidating those funds or simplifying our chart of accounts or our budget, you'll no longer see those, and we'll operate as a county general fund, which will include the county general operations, the debt fund, and economic development. All right, and now this slide will show you the tax rate at the top, and then below that it'll show you the ad valorem revenue generated by those tax rates over the time period and how those will change. And you'll see at the bottom right an increase this year based on the county manager's proposal of an increase in ad valorem revenue of 3.23%. And one of the things to mention here also is as we're merging funds, previously we've had the debt service fund for several years, but there was a piece of a prior debt service that remained in the general fund. And as of this budget, we're going to take that debt service amount that was included in the general fund and move it out into the debt service fund, so that no longer there will be debt service mixed in the general fund and the debt service fund. It'll all be consolidated into one fund, so we can actually show residents and citizens the total cost of debt service each year to the county based on debt issuances going forward. I think that's a step in the right direction. This is a view of county revenues going back to FY18 through our proposal in FY22. You'll see some fluctuations as you look at the far right column, shows the percent change for each revenue category. We just looked at the change for ad valorem taxes and fees of the 3.32%. You'll see below that the change to local option sales tax. That's 15% is a big number for sales tax, but as we know, if we think back to a year ago when we were planning for the FY21 budget during what was the initial phases of the COVID pandemic, we took a very conservative stance on sales tax, and we actually reduced it by 4.5% as compared to the FY20 budget. Our average percentage growth each year is between 5% and 6%, so this is in line with where we should have been had we not made that reduction. But out of an abundance of caution, we did that, and I think it served us well getting through this year. Also, that projection is in line with information that's been shared by the State Department of Fiscal Research, as well as the North Carolina League of Municipalities. So I think that's a good number. You'll see other variations and increases to those revenue categories. I want to piggyback on the county manager's comments about fund balance appropriated. You'll see a significant increase there. That has been strategically placed in the budget to cover increases to one-time items, and so that's helped us this year to meet some of those accomplish some of those one-time projects, one-time items that as we were planning for the FY21 budget, we weren't able to fit those in the budget. So I think you can consider that some pent-up service demand that we held off on based on the circumstances. Also, if you remember back, the FY21 budget grew by 1%. So, again, out of an abundance of caution, the FY21 budget, we limited it to 1% growth, and so now you're seeing some more growth, but that's really combined with the stance we took in FY21, and also with that fund balance portion. And we'll talk about a little more on the next slide. If you pull that out of the budget, so you take out the items that are included that are funded strictly through the fund balance, the percent increase of total revenue changes from 8.38% to 3.74%. So really, it's only for the strategic use of unassigned and available fund balance that growth is more than what a normal year growth would be of 3.74%. And if you combine that with FY21, where we grew 1%, and you add FY22, where we're growing without the fund balance 3.74%, well, that's just under 5% in 2 years. So I feel that's a stable position and a strong recommendation by the manager.
Mr. Chairman, quick question.
Sure.
Just on that
Commissioner
slide.
Rushing, we ask that you hold your questions until after the presentations are taken.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to continue, please, sir.
Sure. This slide here gives you a little more detail around the strategic use of fund balance in the FY22 budget. The second bullet there, you'll see I want to reiterate that the use of this unassigned fund balance is in addition to the 20% that's required to keep on hand per board policy to make sure we meet our requirements for our debt limits and those things. This is the use of fund balance above that limit. I won't read through the whole list, but you'll see there the items that fund balance will be applied for, and that are definitely benefits to the operations of the county and to business partners over the next fiscal year. Then I have a comparison of expense, and now this is for what we call our general fund, which now includes debt service and economic development. So you'll see the increases again to the far right of overall expense. Some of the highlights there are employee compensation, which includes a merit, a class and compensation adjustment, annualization of FY21 frozen positions, and also enhancement positions for 21 that were funded for 6 months as a strategy to balance the budget in FY21. You'll see a significant increase to employee benefits. Again, that's a big piece of that is funding OPEB at $3 million. If you remember back to FY21, we took a holiday from OPEB, and we didn't fund it through in FY21. Although, as we went through the fiscal year and our sales taxes performed more than we expected them to, you'll remember a few weeks ago you recognized and appropriated an amount of sales tax to fund OPEB during the year. So we were able to fund that during the year. You'll see quite an increase for operating costs. That's reflective of the expense for newly opened facilities. We know we're in a period of growth in the county, and those buildings are coming online that we've funded through bond proceeds and other methods a few years back. Now the doors are opening, and we have to staff and we have to pay for utilities and other items for those projects. Also, a big portion of that is sheriff's tools and supplies. Our great sheriff was a great team partner in FY21 and kept a flat budget. We certainly don't want him to do that 2 years in a row, and so you'll see the growth you'll see there is to make sure that the sheriff has what he needs to keep our community safe. In that line item, also in 2021 there was a 5% target reduction by departments, where they actually we reduced that line by 5.7% in 21, and so you'll see some growth significantly from that action as well. Capital outlay, that's a large increase also, and that's mostly sheriff's vehicles, which includes funding for body-worn cameras. The sheriff is making sure that that the deputies have what they need to be in the community policing and keeping us safe, and so that includes the sheriff's vehicles allotment for this year with some increases for some body-worn camera items, and those are the major increases that we see there. I want to talk a little bit about staffing levels or maintaining service levels. We know that in order to provide services to the community, we need to have wonderful county staff that our manager referred to as the county's greatest asset. You'll see a slight increase to county staffing levels per 1,000 residents as compared to FY 2021. That's an increase from 4.5 county employees per 1,000 county residents. Now it's adjusted up slightly from 4.44 to 4.5. I have that. There's a comparison to go back and see, well, where were we before the Great Recession when, there were some significant actions that happened in the county and there were some layoffs that happened. But before those things took place in FY 2008, there were 4.76 county employees, again, general funded county employees per 1,000 residents. And as the population has changed, we're just now getting back into that range of where we were before the Great Recession. Now, efficiencies over time and automation, things like that have helped us also kind of keep that number down. But you'll see that the increase into the proposed enhanced positions feed into that number there. There were 28.68 positions added to the general, or proposed to be added to the general fund, 6 positions in public works, and no positions included to be added to the solid waste fund in FY22. And one of the strategies to be able to fund these positions will be similar to what we did last year, where all non-law enforcement or non-LEO positions will be funded for a half year. So they'll be able to be filled as of January 1, 2022 to try and mitigate the impact of those position costs. I want to talk a little bit about fire. Fire protection is an important topic in Union County, and we're fortunate that we have some great volunteer fire departments in the community that provide a network of protection of fire. The VFDs went through a revenue neutral calculation process as well, just like the general fund did. You'll see the results of that on the left portion of the chart above. I've listed the value of 1 penny for each district, as well as the revenue neutral rate for that district, then the proposed rate for that district, and then the change there on the right side. And you'll see that most districts are a little bit above revenue neutral. Some are below, just based on the needs of those districts, what they requested for the year. Those changes, along with the proposed increases for the departments will result in a transfer from the county's general fund to the VFDs of $5.36 million, which is an increase of just under $1 million, or about 22% from 21. And those are based on meeting the needs of the fire departments to be able to increase staffing levels to full-time staff, sometimes weekend 24-hour coverage, and also to replace and construct new fire stations to replace dilapidated stations that are so small that you can hardly fit a modern fire truck in these stations. So these are needs that have been around for quite some time. Also, the assessed valuation for Unionville VFD has surpassed $1 billion in 2021, and so that's going to be moved into the urban funding model, or for the larger districts, to be an 80-20 funding model instead of the 60-40. So that we feel like they've grown enough to be able to handle that. And another big benefit for the fire departments in 22 is that their need for regular replacement of their SCBA replacements, or their breathing apparatuses, will be added to the county's CIP. So there will always be a replenishment amount, or an ongoing pot of funds to be able to replace those SCBA apparatus as they age out. I can't remember if they age out every 10 or 15 years, but every year someone's on that cycle to need an update there. Now we'll talk a little bit about investing in employees, as the cost of staff increases each year. We know some of the highlights for this process are the addition of a 3% annual merit pool. Also, there's been increases to the required retirement contribution increases for the estate retirement and pension fund from 10.2% to 11.3%. That's out of the gate. That's an increase of $1.4 million. There are increases included for the health and dental insurance fund to make sure and stabilize that resource going forward for the benefit of county employees and their families. Was an additional $500,000 added to that to build back some fund balance that we've used over the past few years as a tactic to pay the bills through the end of the year. We see medical costs increasing, and we want to be sure that remains stable for the future. Also, you'll see increases to the annualization costs for those new positions in 21 and those frozen positions. There's a cost to bring those back for FY22, an increase to separation allowance, and then the class and compensation market adjustment that the county manager mentioned earlier, is $1.2 million. I mentioned earlier to you about some of the expenses around facilities, around the opening of buildings and facilities as the county grows in population. We're growing in facilities, we're growing in need and maturing as a community. You'll see a list there of 5 buildings that either have come online or will be coming online, or have broken ground or are expected to come online during FY22. And the expense to operate those facilities through whatever period left in the fiscal year based on when the doors open. So that's an expense. $1.2 million is a significant hit for the county budget to be able to operate those facilities. I want to mention too that that cost will increase in FY23 because those buildings, if they're online for 6 months in 22 or 3 months in 22, well, they're going to be online for 12 months in 23, and so that's going to be another annualization of costs that we'll see going into FY23. We know we have a great partner we have a great program to partner with local organizations in the community to meet needs that we may not be positioned for as an organization. And one of those, that's known as our Community Partners Program. This year, there were 2 new organizations added to the Community Partner Program. Those are highlighted in your table there. One is Bridge to Recovery, and the other is Ground 40. Those are both organizations that focus on recovery and transitional drug and alcohol treatment in Monroe, also transitional living. These are organizations that have a proven track record of adding value and serving folks in the community who are not eligible for state-funded services and other available resources. And so we're happy to include those and have them as and to sponsor them to provide more service to the community and benefit county residents. Another significant area of funding in the county budget we know is education. We are very, very grateful and pleased that we have such a high-performing school system here in Union County that consistently rates in the top of the state. This is a summary of the proposed funding request from Union County Public Schools this year. The increased amount you'll see with the arrows pointing to is $9.1 million, and that's split between increases to operating of $8.1 million and increases to capital of about $1.1 million as well. There were some redirections that they did at the beginning, which is very valuable to make sure that they're using their internal resources in an efficient manner. That request of $9.1 million reflects a 7.4% increase in overall funding. And our next slide outlines the items that were included in this request and the categories for which they requested funding and the growth amount there. And they're important items of making sure that they're paying their staff their step increases. They're creating they are making sure to pay market salaries to retain key staff in the school system. Many of these areas are bus drivers, some skilled tradesmen, and also support staff that work in the school system. The county manager has recommended or is proposing increasing increasing funding for school systems of $5.5 million. And you'll see that here on this line in the presentation. You'll see this combines all education funding with Spcc and schools. And so you'll see in the top line of this chart the increase to Spcc direct funding. The manager mentioned the Spcc requested an increase of $412,000, I believe, and they're being proposed an increase of $350,000, which is an increase of about 13%. As far as schools operational increase, the manager is recommending instead of an increase of $8 million, an increase of $5.5 million, which is an increase of 5.2% on their operating. And as far as their capital, it's been identified that there's about $600,000 in available funding for prior funded capital projects, and the manager is recommending that they use that available funding in their budget that's already been given to them from the county to meet those needs, meet those capital needs over the next year. I want to point out also that let's see, in FY21, the schools budget, the amount that the county provided to the school system increased by 3%, when the county budget only increased by 1%. And so it was limited in FY21. And we talked earlier about how the increase of the county budget based on this proposal, if you pull out the one-time items funded through fund balance, is only an increase of about 3.75%, I believe. And the school system would increase based on this proposal by 5.2%. So they're pretty equitable there in the growth amount for this year in FY22. The debt obligation for Spcc is currently $12.5 million. This need has been projected to increase to $68 million through 2030. The same comparison for the school system. The current debt obligation is $144 million, and the needs there have been projected at $757 million through 2030 as well. So I think it's important to always keep in mind that the operating portion of the expense is not the whole picture. We should think about operating and capital and long-term debt for capital that's already been issued. And just the last bullet point there refers to the fact that the 14% of county debt service is to cover the debt needs for county operation of county buildings, where 86% of the current debt load is dedicated specifically to school debt. This is a pie chart that shows that breaks out the debt service funding for FY22. You can see the larger blue portion is education funding at 86% of total debt service. And you'll see the other areas are categories for county debt needs, which is the biggest one is public safety. And then cultural and recreational is libraries and parks and rec, and general government is for county operating facilities. This is a pie chart that reflects the total expense for the county budget in FY22. You can see the breakdown there. If you look at on the left side, the large green piece, that's about half of that pie, 48% for education funding. What this reflects is that half of the funds that come into the county, 48% of them go to support education in some form or fashion, and the other half is broken out into county departments. And you can see on the right side, the lighter green is for public safety, for the sheriff's office, EMS, fire, emergency communications, other vital services we have. And you'll see human services to make sure that our residents are taken care of in times of need. And then general government is really the portion that operates the county government, is the darker blue on the top. When you look at the pie in total, that's really the piece that operates the core county services. And the summary of the budget, I won't go through all of those, but they're basically highlights of things that I've talked about and that were included in the county manager's budget message. I won't review them individually, but if you want a quick reference, that's the highlights of the county budget there. And I believe I want to make sure and mention that we have our public hearing scheduled for June 7th, and with a possible adoption on June 21st at the board meeting. Anyone that'd like to follow the budget process from the beginning to the end can do so on our county website at the budget management page, and also follow on county social media portals. I want to make sure and take a second, take an opportunity to pause and give thanks to all of the people, all the organizations that help push this process forward each year. The county tax assessor, their office went through the revaluation this year and provided an incredible service to the county and to us in the budget office to make sure we could create this budget in a responsible manner. I want to thank the county clerk's office for all your support and help in keeping us on track. Also, individual departments of the county, their department directors and leadership, and also their finance and budget staff that put the numbers together for us and help us make sure that we're serving them properly. Also, the information technology team, they've been great to help us. Also, through the implementation of our new budget system this year. I want to thank Beverly Lyles and our finance as our finance director, and her staff have helped us along the way as well. And of course, the county manager, Mark Watson, and executive team for their leadership. And specifically, I'm proud to say that I think we have the best budget team in North Carolina. And I want to make sure I mention Mary Namala, Greg Artman as our two senior budget analysts, and Adrian Rory and Laura Gardner for all the hard work and dedication they put in this year. It's been a team effort, and I think we have a great product to present to you today. And that's all that I have.
Ms. Lyles? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. I'm here to give you an update on our Public Works enterprise budget. It is a high-level update. Your budget books do have more detailed information in there. Obviously, if you have questions, we're happy to address those questions. This is really more of a high level. I want to talk about some of the highlights that are in the Public Works budget. Number one, it is an enterprise, meaning that the revenues that we collect are what we also use to pay our expenses. No county tax dollars are collected and used for the Public Works enterprise purpose. It is only revenues that we collect from our actual ratepayers. I also want to talk about the fact that we do use a fiscally conservative rate model, That has to build into it future costs that we have. So if we have future capital projects, we have to have the debt to be able to pay for that. We have to have the cash on hand to pay for those projects. So we do have a rate model that we use to develop our ultimate rates as well as our budgets. You are not being asked to adopt a rate at this time or on June 21st. That will come at a later time. This is really just the budget side of things. Also, be aware that because we have a water and sewer district, that does complicate the things as far as the budget goes. There are certain transfers that we have to make. Those are accounting measures that we have to take. And those do complicate things. It can make the budget look a little different than a standard enterprise budget. We're happy to try and address those questions, but I do want to make sure you're aware that the district does create some complications. The FY22 budget does show a planned revenue of $72.8 million and expenses of $60.6 million. Obviously, that the revenues over expenditures is to cover a lot of those costs that we anticipate in the future for those projects that we'll have to pay cash for in order to pay debt service that we'll have as far as projects we'll have to pay debt for in the future. Also, we have proposed miscellaneous rates and fees to be adjusted in this budget. We are requesting, if that is approved by the board, to take effect in October. So it would not be a full year. That gives us time to get the word out to the residents and our ratepayers so they understand what we're doing, how that works. We will be requesting a 50% increase in those fees that we showed you previously, not the full request. We would bring that in at a later time, but we are asking for the board to consider miscellaneous rates and fees to be adjusted in this budget. Also, this budget focuses on a number of capital projects that we have. You've got your 12 Mile Creek wastewater reclamation facility. The board voted to expand that facility. We will be doing design in '22. Construction will obviously come later than that, but we'll be doing design. We also have a continuation of our 853 West Zone project, the Yadkin distribution system improvements, Crooked Creek interceptor improvements, and the board has funded and been a big supporter of our short line extension program and our transmission extension program. Those, as well as routine water and wastewater R&R programs, are what we will focus on. There are many other capital projects that we will have. These are just highlights. There's some that have been previously funded and allocated for, but those are some of the highlights. Just sort of talking about how the district and the public works enterprise operate. So we actually have to account for both of those funds. And what we've done here, try to show that up a little easier, is what is the operating fund, and then what is the district fund, and how do those interact together? You showed the revenues and expenses for both. I do want to point out that, when I mentioned the $72.8 million, that number is right here, and the expenditures is in this area here. But you have these interfund transfers that ultimately affect the bottom line for both the district as well as the operating. And that's where the complication comes from. We have a number of items that we have to transfer back and forth. You've got an interfund transfer to capital that comes out of the district. You also have an interfund transfer to operating that comes out of the district. And then ultimately from the operating side, you have a fund balance appropriation that actually comes out of the operating side of that. All right. Just to give you some budget notes, revenues for service charges did go up by 8.7% from our FY21. However, total revenues are not quite 8.7. That's because some of our revenues we did not meet. We had, COVID did cause us some issues with our revenues this year. And so it's anticipated that we will have some of our revenues that will not be as high as we anticipated. That's why we're saying we'll see an 8.1% total revenue increase. For expenses, Our personnel and operating costs are actually down by 6.8% from 2021. Our capital, this is operating capital. This is not capital as far as projects go. This is, machinery, this is trucks, vehicles, that kind of operating. We show that as a 58.7% increase. That seems like a lot. The request is a little over $2 million. So it went from just a few $100,000 to a little over $2 million for those items that are operating capital need. And then our debt service payment increased as well, and you will see that debt service payment will increase over time. We'll have a number of years that will go up. Just to point out, we had just a few years ago, we had $50 million in debt service payments that we had to make, so we have to anticipate that. What to expect out of the Public Works? We have 53,100 water customers, 39,000, almost 40,000 sewer connections. We are moving forward with, obviously, the expansion plans that the board has approved. Construction for the Yadkin project is underway. That will add about 4 million gallons of capacity in its original construction. It's permitted, approved for 12 million gallons, but we will only be constructing up to 4 million gallons for the first phase of it. We have the advanced metering technology that we will be going through in the next couple of years, replacing meters to provide customers and us with better information for how we manage our system and how they understand what is occurring on their property for water and sewer usage. We also have new customer service technology that we'll be implementing so we can provide faster, better customer service for our customers. And then finally, we are doing a reorganization of our engineering division so that we can create sort of a separate and new construction unit, and we can add some individuals to help with our capacity monitoring. That's very important, obviously, this year with our capacity issues. So capacity monitoring is something we want to focus on, and those are the highlights for what we have for the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but that is the high-level budget for Public Works this year. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you've heard today throughout the message, that the recommended budget has some recommendations to utilize our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance, to its full usage, and we'll talk about that for each individual fund. We'll touch on all capital funds today. There'll be no surprises here. We've had many workshops about capital for both facilities and Public Works and solid waste throughout this past year. We'll start with, where does the money come from for what's in the recommended budget for the general CIP? As Blake mentioned before, there's an interfund transfer from the general fund revenue of $10.5 million. We also ourselves have some project savings from previous public safety projects and communications that will be utilized for public safety projects, as well as we have an opportunity to utilize 2/3 general obligation bonds capacity this year if we choose to do so. What's in the recommended budget is only the $10 million. You'll not be asked to adopt any bond financing in the regular budget ordinance. That will come at a later time. The next slide shows a summary of our general CIP by category, what we're actually recommending funding. As you can see, the majority of this is the major capital projects that you were presented in a budget workshop a few weeks ago from Chris Boyd, as well as South Piedmont Community College. There are some safety needs there, and we'll touch on those in more detail. Public safety projects you were presented as well in the board workshop from Patrick just a few weeks ago. So total general CIP funding for FY22 is recommended at $26.4 million. And by category, this is your major capital projects that was presented at the board workshop. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through each one of these, but I wanted you to know what made up that grand total. Also, for facilities capital projects, our critical infrastructure needs that was presented as well as the board workshop includes the government center electrical infrastructure, generators, new and replacement generators, and then some other miscellaneous critical infrastructure needs. You also have your annual operating R&R projects that are ongoing each year. This is just to maintain our current facilities at these different locations throughout the county. The public safety projects includes the radio replacements, the volunteer fire department air packs that Blake mentioned earlier, and also the radio software. The other capital projects that includes the North Carolina DOT projects, if you recall, as a board, you took action several years ago to fund those projects at $100,000 a year for 5 years, and this is the last year of that funding. So they will have a total of $500,000 for NCDOT projects. For South Piedmont, we looked at the South Piedmont request that they presented in their long-term capital funding plan, and some of their top priorities were around safety and security. So the recommended budget includes giving them $2.4 million for safety and security projects so they can have access controls for all of their facilities as well as a camera system. If you recall, for the past several years, we have funded safety and security projects for Union County Public Schools. And we feel, as the recommended budget, that it's important to also do that for the South Piedmont Community College facilities. Part of their long-term funding request also included additional funding for Building A renovations. This was a project that was included as voter-approved debt, and they need additional funding to be able to complete that. So we're recommended using our 2/3 bond capacity for that as well. And we also provide South Piedmont Community College with annual capital funding for their ongoing capital needs, just like we do for our regular annual R&R money here. For education, as you heard the manager say, and also Blake in his presentation, our recommended funding for Union County Public Schools capital is $19,073,000. That's being funded with a combination of the general fund revenue that's flat at the $18.4 million in general fund dollars, and also we have indicated in conjunction with Union County Public School staff some project savings from older projects dating back to 2016 that they no longer need funding on, that they could reutilize for their total capital request. This capital request is broken down by their programs, and we would ask them to work in conjunction with us to determine which one of these programs they would like to maybe decrease by this amount to determine our total projects for FY22. For solid waste, you've had several presentations from them regarding the expansion of the C&D cells at the landfill. The funding that is included in their operational budget for this for FY22 is $550,000. For water and sewer, this is a high-level summary of CIP for them. As Brian mentioned in his presentation, the interfund transfer to capital is where you're getting the $25 million in funding source for this. That's any excess revenues over expenditures based on the fund balance policy that'll be utilized for one-time capital needs. And also it includes future revenue bond issuance for a total funding request of $71 million. Brian highlighted the major capital programs for water and sewer. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but you can see each one here and the breakout of funding by program. And for that, I'll stop and say, do you have any questions about CIP before we go into the next steps?
Well, I appreciate your presentation. I want to thank the manager for his message, Blake, Brian, and Beverly for their presentations.
Okay.
I believe I understand where we are in the proposed budget and the issues of revenue neutral. You will hear some people paint with a broad brush that if we do not approve a revenue neutral rate, we are raising taxes. I don't agree with that generalization. If you saw an increase in your property valuation less than the average 30.6, you should pay less in property taxes. If your valuation was over the average, you'll probably pay a little more in your property tax. That hits me. However, as we saw in the presentation, the individual property owners should look at their total out-of-pocket cost, including vehicle tax, personal property tax, property that is taxed. I believe in many cases, there will be modest change. Many will stay the same. Some will see decreases in their out-of-pocket costs in Union County. As Mark said, the revaluation adjustment for property tax required for motor vehicle will move from motor vehicles to the Hummer. I appreciate the information that's been shared, and I'm pleased with the work I've seen from staff in developing this recommendation. I believe this recommendation gives us a key investment in important areas: our employees, public safety, facilities, and capital infrastructure, as well as education. We've received a lot of information here tonight. And as I stated earlier, staff will be available to answer any questions we have, and therefore give us the opportunity to have an educated approach to our June 21st, hopefully, approval of this recommended budget. I appreciate it, and I'll make a motion to adjourn.
What?
A motion to adjourn.
You wouldn't let me ask my question during the presentation, now you're gonna adjourn.
I stated at the beginning that this was an information presentation. We'll have a public hearing. We'll have,
I got a question about the information that was presented.
what's your question, Steve?
Okay. Mark, why was the $46 million from the federal government that we've been allocated not included? Like, normally when we have expenses like intergovernment related, or when we get grants or whatever, why was that not included in this year's coming budget?
I'm being signaled from out here, but we've got a good answer for that.
So the accounting of those funds are not regular general county dollars, and the state LGC and accounting principles requires us to report them in special revenue funds. So they're not commingled with your general county dollars.
But like when we get a grant, or we get, anytime there's a transfer from one government entity, like the state or the federal government to
Right.
us, we have restrictions on it maybe, or we have that.
We do. These are restricted for one specific purpose based on what, like the American Recovery Plan Act is being released for, and the CARES Act was specific for COVID. A lot of our other grants, like for DSS, they span over the entire operations of social services, so they're not specific for one type of expenditure.
But like a park grant would be just for parks, right?
That's correct.
Would we include that?
We do track some grants in the special revenue fund if they span over multiple years. So the special revenue fund is a multi-year fund instead of an annual adopted capital fund. I mean, an annual operating adopted fund.
So I guess I'm still not clear.
Your specific question, though, was about the $46 million in American
Right.
Recovery Act funds, and we have not received those funds.
Right.
But we've not received property taxes either, but we've budgeted for them. We're budgeting for property tax for 2022. We will receive them,
We're not going to receive $46 million this
Right.
year.
but we'll
We'll only
receive
receive
it.
half of that up front, and there will be a plan put in place to appropriate it in the special revenue fund at a later date.
So $23 million, again, I'm very curious as why that wasn't included. The other thing was, we did have less operation cost in 2020, right? Like our operating cost because of COVID was lower, and I couldn't remember that number. There was a lower number. Did we save 800,000? Did we say, I can't, again, y'all please help me with the number. You said we had some efficiencies because we weren't open at the building here. So we had people working from home, so there was efficiencies there.
I don't know that our total operating expenses decreased because we had to find some workarounds to be able to allow those people to work from home. It was an increased cost in information technologies, equipment, et cetera, to facilitate those individuals working from home so we could continue to provide the level of service that our residents do expect. I believe Brian, though, did point out that we had a decrease in operational cost in public works over this past year. I think it was 6.8%,
Right.
if I'm correct. I don't know the specifics of that savings. Perhaps were not able to accomplish some of the operational items that they had planned to this past year because of COVID. That might be the cause of the savings. But I can tell you that, and from an operational standpoint in Union County government, our buildings were open, the employees were in them, we were at work. Now, again, some people may have been working from home, whatever that case may have been, but we were providing those services, and these facilities continued to be operated.
Okay. 28 positions, how many of those are law enforcement? 28 new positions?
We'll get that answer, just one second.
You know, Mr. Manager,
Yes.
that's one of the reasons I said that we need to go back and get the information, because I think it's in the budget presentation, the total package. That's why I say, let's take this offline, get our information, and
We've got all the answers to the questions, and we'd be glad to sit down with you one-on-one.
Oh, yeah,
In
I'm sure we
terms
can ask those questions privately.
of law.
Yeah, I'm sure
law
that's the way we
enforcement-
probably need to start doing Union County business if y'all would like to do it.
Well, we're certainly not
Motion to
withholding
adjourn.
information.
Be glad to do it privately.
you can get the information. We'll have the opportunity to discuss it on the 21st. Anything that you have a concern with, you can address. We got a lot of information, and until you digest that information, you can make wrong assumptions. There's been a lot of wrong assumptions put out in social media, and it doesn't help us or the public. Michelle, did you want to say something?
I'm just going to answer Commissioner Rushing's question. For a sheriff's office, we have 9 positions, I believe, that are recommended. But if you look on page 1 of the budget overview, section B, you'll actually see all of the positions listed by each department. So it's a front and back page.
That's in our package.
It
Is
is,
that correct?
the very beginning of the book.
We have a motion. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.